Hey guys, in the last episode you saw me embroidering with metallic threads, and since the holidays are around the corner, I figured that I would do an updated video on some of my best tips for working with metallic threads to ensure that you don't get any thread breaks, so stick around. With that being said, as usual, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you were watching my last video, you saw that I set a goal for myself to hit 25,000, myself and my crew. Let's not forget the wonderful people who edit these videos and make them really funny for you guys. But anyway, so I set a goal for myself and everyone here at Embroidery Hub to reach 25,000 subscribers before the end of this year. And you guys, I am pumped, but I can't do it without your help. So please like, subscribe, comment, do anything and everything you can to help keep this channel going. So with that being said, let's just jump right into our tips. Tip number 1 is to change your needle size. Typically, you would be using a size 75/11 sharp point needle. That is the standard embroidery needle. However, when you're working with metallics, you can switch up to an 80/12 needle or even a 90/14 needle. In the last episode, I was actually using a size 90/14 because it's what I had on hand, and I had absolutely no issues with that. And the reason being is because when you change your needle size, the eye of the needle actually gets larger, and what that does is that it helps the metallic thread pass through more smoothly. So when you are switching your needle size, please make sure to keep the actual fabric that you're working with in mind. I would always start with an 80/12 rather than a 90/14, and if the 80/12 still gives you issues, then move up to a 90/14. And the reason being is because you definitely don't want to be using a 90/14 on, let's say, like a thin polyester fabric, for instance, because it's going to be puncturing too large of a hole. You can also invest in some specialty metallic thread needles that have a slightly larger eye so that the thread can pass through a little bit smoother. I've never had any issues with the standard 80/12 or 90/14 needles because I employ these other tips that I'm about to tell you right now. Tip número 2. Tip number 2. Slow down the speed of your machine when you're working with metallic thread. So I always slow it down to 600 to 700 stitches per minute. Again, it also depends on the complexity of the design. So if you're working with very detailed shorter stitch lengths, then you want to probably slow it down more to 600 than 700. And if you're working with the longer stitches, then you can probably bring it up to 700, and even 800 should be fine. But if you really don't want to run the risk of getting any thread breaks in between, you want to just leave your machine running and walk away, let's go with 600. Again, the reason why you want to slow down your machine is because the thread is coarser, it is less elastic, so it tends to rip a lot easier, right? So you see this? Snaps super easily. Ow! You see, that one doesn't. This one, it just like, when I pull it really hard, it'll just like, it doesn't do it unless I'm like really close and I get a lot of pressure in there. But with this one, it snaps very easily. So these first 2 tips are very easy. It's all just about using the right materials, covering your bases. But this next tip is going to be about tension. So tip number 3 is to reduce tension when you are working with metallic thread. So since we're talking about top thread, we are going to reduce tension on our top thread. And we're going to be using our top tension knobs for the single needle of the metallic thread, rather than touching this right here, which controls the tension of all needles. So because metallic thread is needle number 14 for me, I'm just going to go up here to this top tension knob and loosen it just a few quarter turns, see how it performs. And if I'm not getting any issues, then I should be fine. Keep in mind, you don't need to make any major tension adjustments. You just need to loosen up that knob just a bit, a few quarter turns until the machine is performing the way you want it to. Tip number 4 is related to the type of embroidery design you're using. So when we're working with metallic threads, you want to make sure of 2 things. 1, I would personally do more red work type of designs, which are like those open running stitch designs. They pop really well because they're metallic and they don't tend to give you any issues. However, if you do need to work with designs that have bills, just keep in mind to keep your stitch lengths longer, because shorter stitch lengths are more likely to cause abrasion and cause thread breaks. So for instance, these satin stitches stitched out pretty beautifully because they are long satin stitches. These a lot shorter one, still stitched out pretty nice. And that's because I was using my 90-14 needle, and I also reduced the tension, and I slowed down the speed of the machine. So it's very important to use all of these tips together. Just keep in mind, again, don't create too short of a fill stitch because that can cause thread breaks. So you may be wondering why I just put my metallic thread inside my fridge. And the reason being is that the cold is said to help with the twisting. So metallic thread tends to twist when it is being fed off the spool, whereas other threads are kind of like feed more through consistently. So what the cold does is just help the thread not twist as much, which will help prevent thread breaks. Have I ever seen a difference? Not really, because I usually cover all my bases with metallic thread. However, it doesn't hurt to just take that quick extra step and leave it in the fridge for an extra 30 minutes to an hour. Tip number 6 is to use pre-wound bobbin rather than self-wound bobbin when you are working with metallic thread specifically, just to ensure that the thread feeds off the spool consistently. Tip number 7 is to use a needle lubricant. And typically the needle lubricants are, it's called Sewer's Aid. It's to help reduce the friction between the eye of the needle and the thread. But not only can you use it on the eye of the needle and the thread, you can also put some on a thread and then pass it through your threaded path, as so. And then let that lubricated needle run through the whole thread path just to reduce any friction on the entire thread path and not just the needle's eye. And again, the trend here is to try to reduce friction as much as possible because that's ultimately what's going to cause your thread breaks. Number 8 should apply to all types of thread and designs, but more so when you're working with metallics. Keep your machine nice and maintained and polished and free of burrs, because burrs, which are just like, you know, the little scratches on any part of the thread path, including the needle plate, can cause thread breaks, especially more so with metallics. So while you might get away with a few burrs with regular thread, with metallic thread, you're definitely gonna feel that. So if you do get a burr in the needle plate, you can always replace the needle plate. If you get any thread path, you can just polish it away. Tip number 9 is one that I have yet to try because I employ all of these other tips, but I wanted to throw it in there anyway because I've seen a lot of people talk about this. So tip number 9 is to create a horizontal spool pin or a vertical spool pin, depending on the way that the thread feeds into your machine. So the thread feeds into my machine vertically, right? So therefore I would need to create a horizontal spool pin, and you can kind of like get creative and make your own. And then what happens there when it's horizontal is that it's no longer twisting the way it twists when it's vertical. You see that? When it's horizontal, it's gonna feed off really nice and consistently. So it's not, it's, you know, said to not give you as much of those breakage issues. Last but not least is to just beware of certain fabrics because they might not be as forgiving with metallic thread. For instance, tougher fabrics such as leather, you probably would want to stay away from metallics. And then we also have softer fabrics such as satin, for instance. The metallic might be a little bit too rough for it. Also with babies' clothing or toys, I would stay away from using metallic thread just because you don't want it to brush up against their skin. It is sensitive, and metallic thread tends to be pretty rough. So you don't want that causing any discomfort to the child. So with these in mind, I wish you guys the best of luck on your holiday orders. If you liked this video, if you gained anything from this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And of course, leave me a comment if you have any other questions or if you have any advice on metallic thread. For anyone else who's watching, I'm sure it would be just as helpful. Also, don't forget to join me on our Facebook group, Embroidery and Custom Apparel Mastery. In there, you can chat with me and thousands of other embroiderers, ask any questions you have, and share anything that you may know that can help another embroiderer out. Alrighty, so again, thank you so much for watching. Remember my goal of 25,000 subscribers, so please like, comment, share, do everything and anything you possibly can to help grow this channel and bring amazing content to all embroiderers. Thanks so much and happy holidays, guys. Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. I don't know where I got that. Oh, la cucaracha, ya no quiere caminar. La cucaracha, ya no quiere caminar. Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Okay.
Laura!
Sorry. I'm almost done.